Thank you very much. So my name is Martin Moran. I work for Salesforce and I look after our partners and channels worldwide. Thanks for you all for attending. And as you probably know from the sign outside, not from the slide, because we don't have them, this session is about hearing from some of our top consulting partners about the sort of things that they've looked at, they've thought about, and they've enacted to make them successful in enterprise cloud computing. And we have a very, very august panel here of fine gentlemen. And so I'd like to introduce those two now. From left to right, we have Kim Peterson from Deloitte, Deloitte have been working with us for a good number of years, and Kim in particular is immersed in Salesforce.com. And then we have Mike Eppner, head of delivery from Aperio, and of course you would have seen a lot of stuff from Aperio during the course of 2 days, and that you might recall from yesterday's keynote that amazing demo of your PSA app with Chatter. Like, and it's the power of the cloud enacted over a couple of hours. We announced it on Monday. There it was live in an application on Tuesday. That was pretty impressive. We also have with us Josh Holtzman, who's the President and CEO of American Data Company, another one of our long-standing partners here in the US. And also Greg Kaplan, who's Managing Director of Blue Wolf. And I think Blue Wolf have been a partner for, I don't know, since the very beginning. So they've sort of grown with us from us being an infant, tiny little ankle biter company right away through to where we are now. So, it's I get a lot of questions from partners around the world about how do we move into this world of enterprise cloud computing? How do we make it a business that is profitable, that is services orientated, and how do we make that work with a customer base? And it's sort of interesting. Some interesting concepts I hope these guys are going to share with you, and particularly their secrets. We talked about this session before we started. I don't think we can get all of the secrets because these guys compete with each other, but hopefully they're going to get quite a lot of the secrets. And if they don't tell you, I may tell you some of them anyway. But it is a different business model. As we for the last 10 years have been educating our customer base about moving from client server to enterprise cloud computing, and the paradigm shift of that, and the different economic model, and the different delivery model, and the different view of success that brings. In the same time, our partners have been trying to work that out as well. They've been trying to figure out how they can go to their customers and as trusted advisors to their customers and help them along that transition, that evolution. I mean, I know these guys are going to attest to this, but I meet a lot of CIOs. And the one thing that's really sort of resonated with me is just about every CIO understands that the cloud's important. And just about every CIO knows now, and particularly like times like this, the last couple of years have been tough, right? And it used to be said that CIO's job was to do more with less, right? I think the CIO's job now is to do more with nothing. The amount of CIOs they said, you know what? We love this, but I have $0 to spend. So what am I going to do? I have to move this way, but I've got no money. And so it's sort of an interesting evolution. You would have heard Mark say about this paradigm shift with Force.com and the change it's making and what's happening with why are people still paying these ridiculous maintenance dollars on applications that are either end of life or have diminished in their value. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing ways in which these guys are creatively looking at enabling CIOs to move from that maintenance-centric old model and repurpose those dollars into enterprise cloud computing. So I think, to start off, what I'd like to do is the guys each to give us a little bit of background about themselves and about their companies and where they are in the world of enterprise cloud computing. So I'd like to start with you, Greg. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Blue Wolf.
Sure. Blue Wolf, as Martin, as you mentioned, has been a partner of Salesforce for almost 10 years now. Where our focus is really helping organizations transform their business in an agile framework. So, sorry. Speak up. All right.
You need to project.
We need to project here. Okay. Blue Wolf has been around for, again, 10 years. We have helped organizations transform their business into the cloud, so leveraging cloud technologies and really putting a set of services around that. My background is from Oracle. I was at Oracle for about 10 years. I went to a startup in 2000 and was actually an early Salesforce customer. I was at a company called MetaTV, and I ran sales there, and was an early Salesforce.com user. And then it was an interesting, my aha moment, I think, was coming from Oracle and running a sales team there and using Oracle Sales and Marketing and spreadsheets. It was very difficult. And seeing what we could do in a startup environment with limited resources and really leveraging cloud technology like Salesforce. So I liked it so much, I actually went to Salesforce.com in 2002 and was part of the sales team there. And we had an interesting run from 2002 to 2004 at Salesforce. Eric Berridge, our founder at Blue Wolf, gave me a call and said, hey, we'd like to get the practice going in San Francisco. I left Salesforce and started our San Francisco practice, and for the last 6 years of building a business here in San Francisco and working with teams here on the West Coast. So,
Great, thanks, Greg.
yeah, you bet.
Okay. Mike, how about your perspective?
Oh, sure. So I'm Mike Etner from Aperio. We are a product and services company, so we sell products that are built primarily on the Force.com platform. We have some connectors that go between some of the cloud applications like Salesforce.com and Google. The company was founded by a group of reformed enterprise software executives, people that came out of SAP, came out of WebMethods, Borland Software, et cetera. Been in business for about 3 years, working with Salesforce on implementations as well and doing a lot of custom application development on the platform. Personally, I have been in consulting about 20 years. I spent a lot of time with folks like EDS and Perot Systems in the application development space and in looking at how you build apps in the old-fashioned way. So being involved in Force.com has been an incredible change, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that. But joined much like Greg, we just met today. I was also a former customer at Borland. I ran support and services and implemented Salesforce inside of our service and support organization and saw the results, and that really hooked me on cloud computing. We were running Clarify in an on-premise version, and it kept crashing. We couldn't modify it. User adoption was tough. Put in Salesforce and seriously re-engineered the organization. And user adoption went up, customer satisfaction went through the roof, et cetera. And it was primarily because of Salesforce and the portal.
Great, thanks. And Josh?
I'm Josh Holtzman from American Data Company. I founded the company back in 2003, and since then we've transformed from really a web development shop specializing in J2E solutions and heavily adopted the cloud. Now, really how we position ourselves for the past 4 years is as a business process and technology consulting firm that specializes in cloud computing. So we've leveraged both CRM and the Force.com platform to deliver consulting services to clients of a variety of sizes. We've also leveraged the platform to develop some products that are available on the App Exchange as well. Prior to founding American Data Company, I really worked in the trenches as a Java developer. I surely had an aha moment when I realized that we were really tired of deploying servers, managing servers, and could very easily and reliably rely on someone else who could help us out with our infrastructure in a much more efficient and effective manner.
Great, thanks, Josh. Kim?
Hi, everyone. Kim Peterson from Deloitte. Hopefully, most of you know the name Deloitte. It's an audit and tax and consulting firm. We're, I would say, one of the larger consulting firms, a tier 1 consulting firm. Very interesting road for me and how I sort of got here. I was hired into Deloitte to sort of be a CRM representative for the Western United States, and I came to Dreamforce 5 years ago. It was my first Dreamforce, and I was the only one here from Deloitte. And I sort of had my, speaking of aha moments, I all of a sudden realized sort of the raving fan base of all the clients that use the product, and I had to go back to Deloitte then and sort of explain what SaaS was, and I probably spent the next 3 years trying to build the SaaS mentality inside Deloitte, being that we're also a big Oracle and SAP shop as well, I was also often competing against some of my own brethren from my same company. So I've had a very interesting road, and I have a lot of learning experiences of trying to sort of explain what SaaS is to our internal clients at Deloitte being partners, and as well as our external clients being customers. So very interesting experience, been an interesting road.
Great, thanks. It's sort of interesting, everyone sort of has their aha moment with Salesforce.com. I think one of the things that would be really interesting here, and I know what's great about this panel is that we have this sort of, it's like an evolution. I think about, when you think about Salesforce.com, I think about, our ISVs and how some of them are composite. That means they're using some technology and sort of integrating with our platform, and some of them are net native. And I've sort of think about that in terms of our partners. We sort of have some net native partners, who have sort of grown up with us, and we have some partners who have sort of migrated, who are the composites, who have sort of seen the error of their ways in a sense. I didn't mean that, I'm kidding. But I think what I'd really like to hear about was how is this model, how getting into cloud and really cloud consulting, how's that changed the way you look at your delivery model? How's that changed the way you look at your economic model around consulting? And I know it'd be great to get a perspective of someone who came straight into that, straight from grassroots, and maybe the other end of the spectrum where you've got a very traditional consulting model, which is brought millions and millions of dollars, and how you've sort of reacted to the change that cloud computing has brought. So, Josh, why don't I start with you?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think the biggest shift is in traditional on-premise consulting, those technologies. Typically, you see more of a waterfall approach. It's a longer-term engagement of longer-term services, as well as obviously licensing. There's hardware involved, all sorts of the aspects of a deployment that you would imagine from that perspective. Versus a software as a service or cloud deployment, typically I think we would all agree we see more of an iterative, bite-sized chunk approach, whereby we'll work with clients over a period of a few weeks or a period of a few months to deploy an initial rollout and then expand upon that over time. Obviously there's an economic difference there as well. Our deals are obviously much smaller in size, but I think we're much more nimble because of it. And obviously the sales cycle and the process typically moves along a lot faster than a multi-million-dollar traditional rollout.
Thanks. How about Kim? Just hear it from the other end of the spectrum.
It was an interesting road in the beginning for us. We basically had to blow up all our methodologies. We had we have all kinds of enterprise value delivery models that we had within our firm for delivering on-premise solutions. And for us to launch our SaaS practice inside Deloitte, we had to basically break all those models, and we broke our project up to much more phased type of work. The projects did go much faster, but I would say they're in multiple stages, much like the gentleman just said. So it was, I think it was the piecemeal nature and how fast we could deploy products and actually the value we could achieve in a very quick time frame. So that was a whole new model for us. And the really interesting part for us is we often, in some of our sales cycles, we compete against our own practice. So we have a number of opportunities we work with Salesforce on, where it's actually Deloitte Salesforce against Deloitte Oracle or Deloitte's SAP CRM. And so we're often competing and selling against our own methodologies. And the thing that usually comes through is we all are, and when we're delivering those proposals and on those opportunities, the time to value is much quicker, much less expensive to implement, and that's been a big value prop. And fortunately for Salesforce usually wins most of those opportunities. So,
I love the schizophrenia. It's great. Mike.
Yeah, sure. I think application development and overall is just fundamentally different when you're working with customers. The old days, you would spend a lot of time doing requirements. You would spend a lot of time on non-functional requirements, the hardware and the software. And for us, just getting in and focusing right away on the business process and having that conversation with a customer in that first meeting, and then going away prototyping it or even working with them iteratively over a couple of week period in the sales cycle to prototype what it is they're trying to do, it just changes fundamentally how you sell to a customer. I mean, it's no longer just going through that, or even getting started on the project with standing up servers and having to worry about getting people logins and access and all of that, which can take 3 to 4 months. Typically, we're getting in there and doing it right away in development environments, as soon as we get going. So it just fundamentally changes the dynamic with the customer and how optimistic and happy they are coming out of the gate to just see something, rather than just seeing paper and requirements and those sorts of things.
Thanks, Mike. And from crawling to running.
That's right.
Greg, what's your view on this?
I mean, to add on to what Mike was saying is that definitely the dialogue has fundamentally changed in that, right, you're not talking about, where we're going to put the hardware, how are we going to stripe the database, all of that IT-focused dialogue, but really focused on the business process. It also means for your organizations, what type of resources are you going to be bringing into your organization to have that dialogue? So it fundamentally changes how you kind of structure your business. So you need to bring people into the organization that can have that business dialogue, that are focused on the end user, that understand how you're going to take an organization and transform their business, not necessarily figure out where you're going to put IT infrastructure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think one of the things would be, I just want to ask you a question. I assume everyone out here is partners, except for the few people I know who work for Salesforce. Can you put hands up if you're a partner of, say, less than 12 months? So there's a good few here. Like less than 2 years? Okay. I think what it would be useful for those guys to hear is, if you were to pick out 3 things, maybe from each of you, 3 things that you really need to, to gear yourself to be successful in cloud computing, what would those 3 be? So whoever gets to go first gets the easy job. The person who goes last gets it really tough. So you put your hand up. Mike, so away you go.
Yeah, I think fundamentally you have, and I don't know if it's 3 or maybe I'll just do 1, but you fundamentally have to believe in the cloud. You have to be out there and living and working in the cloud. For us, that's being without a single server in the company, and sometimes that's not easy to do. But it forces us to think about really where things are going. The industry is going to where enterprises are going to be more and more cloud in the cloud. And for email, transitioning from a traditional Outlook environment to a Google environment, building things on top of Force.com that run your business. We run our HR systems primarily on Force.com. And so doing that forces you to think about how the users are going to be spending their time and allows you to talk to them in a very unique way, and hopefully makes you believers in what you're selling, and that breeds passion. Our consultants and our sales team are very passionate about what they're doing because they see the benefits that it brings to you. So I don't know if that's 3.
Okay.
I would just add to that, I think we're at a very interesting time in the SaaS space. The way I would describe Salesforce is they went after the Salesforce automation market first, and that was pretty much a sale that didn't involve the CIO. And now with the aspect of cloud computing, and Salesforce has done a fabulous job of making Salesforce and cloud computing synonymous in the marketplace. But I now think that with the advent of the Service Cloud and the different platform applications, you now actually have to approach directly the CIO. So I think one of our big moments and one of the things we're going through right now is how do we make the cloud sort of come to life. These CIOs are trying to figure out how they put their toe in the water of cloud computing, and they want to sort of do baby steps on how to get there. So we're spending a lot of time as a firm helping them sort of figure out how do I get started. And I think if we can make it tangible and so that they can find actionable items that they can actually deploy. I think a lot of people are talking a lot about the cloud, but trying to make it actual in some of these larger companies is a big challenge. And I think trying to make it a doable process for them is a big part of what we're working on.
Cool, thanks. Great.
Yeah, I think this show is pretty indicative of what's happening in the marketplace. I mean, to add what Kim was saying is that we did our first Dreamforce, I think, 8 years ago, and the conversation was, can I really put information into the cloud, and how do you change a field? This thing's in the internet. The dialogue we're having on the show floor with clients is much more about business transformation, and almost, Salesforce has done a great job. Just they're assuming the cloud is secure and scalable, and that's actually table stakes today. So I'd say really it gets back to then focusing on how are we going to make you the customer successful, and I think there's an assumption today that we can do this on cloud.
Cool. Josh.
So I guess in a more these are all really good high-level insights, terrific high-level insights. Sort of going a little bit lower down in terms of organizations that are starting up, perhaps with Salesforce, or interested in becoming a partner, or just sort of ramping up. Kudos to Salesforce in that the partner program has really evolved over the past couple of years, and particularly in regards to the level of materials and training and support that they've provided their partners. I think we've all seen a significant change in the certifications, the materials, and support and education that Salesforce provides. So one suggestion is there is to make use of that diligently. It's there and tremendously helpful to get your team ramped up.
Great, thanks very much. And I think that's a great point. And we've put a lot of time and effort and investment into the what we make available. And the process we're going through now is what you see on the partner portal is an absolute mirror reflection of what we do for our own sales organization, our own professional services organization, our own customer services and support organization, and our customer success managers. We use the same process, we use the same materials, we just externalize them so you guys can sort of have the benefit of that sort of insight. I think it's sort of interesting. I said last night at the party that the one thing that really impressed me about this conference wasn't just the size of the expo, which is, I guess, hopefully you'll agree, was pretty phenomenal. And there was a major buzz there. But what really interested me was the difference between last year and this year was the number of consulting partners that came to the conference, not just saying, we're a services company, we can do implementation, we can help you transform your business, but also now are bringing real applications to the party. So it sort of struck me very late last night, so sort of through a haze, that that's sort of one of the changes we're seeing is that with this new model, it enables you to actually to actualize the things, the value you can bring to your customers. So I'd like to get your thoughts on the impact you see that the platform itself, Force.com, is having on your businesses. And as a secondary to that is what are the customers saying about this? Because I sort of get the sense sometimes that it's one of those aha moments as well, and some people just say, "Wow, yeah, I've got it," and then others sort of, "Yeah, I just don't figure this." So maybe we start with Mike.
Yeah, sure. We like to think of our company as IBM without the baggage of hardware. So it's that product and services approach to the market. And we believe that cloud computing and Salesforce.com and Force.com in particular allow us to have a consulting business that feeds product ideas and products to our development organization. You saw in the keynote yesterday, if you were there, you saw our professional services package, which is on top of Force.com. That was an entire suite of software that was put together over a 9-month period with 4 developers and 1 QA person. So the type of development and the speed of development and the ease of development, it really enables you to do some really cool things with the platform. From a customer perspective, I think the keynote yesterday highlighted the aha moment for our customers. We have customers who were on that platform, and we were kind of teasing them ahead of the keynote that you really have to be there because you're going to see some of our new functionality. Well, the new functionality isn't really ours. It's Salesforce's functionality. They're going to get chatter in their services organizations and be able to do things that we didn't invest in. It's why we're building on top of these platforms, because you get automatically with new innovation coming out of Salesforce, new features in your product that you can take advantage of and really increase your value proposition in selling against people who are still doing things the traditional way or building on platforms that don't have that type of flexibility and capability. So it really is a fundamental shift we think in the marketplace around products in particular.
Thanks, Mike. What's your take on the platform, then, Greg?
Sure. In terms of the platform, I think it has been transformative. And that's probably the one area that clients will, as Kim said, you need to ease them into it. Though we have examples of a major insurance organization in the Midwest that's running $1 billion of policy management through an application that is built on the platform. And in terms of our business, in terms of how you kind of monetize that, it's for us, it's still a focus on what is it that what set of services does the client need in order to ensure success. And we do have some frameworks that we will bring to that engagement in the form of an annuity or time and materials in a more traditional model. So for us as an organization, it's an opportunity to annuitize some of our revenue streams as well.
Okay, thanks. Josh?
Well, the interesting thing is with the growth of the Force.com platform for American Data Company, it's really caused us to kind of go back to our roots as a company. As I mentioned, we started off really as a shop developing custom applications for clients. And when we made the the transition to build out our consulting practice around Salesforce a couple years back, we started transforming a little bit to, hey, let's sort of dump our development experience to some extent and really focus on what cloud computing is so great at, which is just really business process configuration, ensuring you can really focus on the business needs with some point-and-click customization. As Salesforce has developed their platform, providing things like Apex and Visualforce, their API for integration, it's enabled us really to build really powerful custom applications on the platform. Applications of all types. And we're working with clients like many of these firms up here, from high-growth startups to some of the largest enterprises in the world. I think that it behooves anybody who's looking to build their partnership out to sort of think hard about where do we want to be in that space. Do we want to continue and grow out our CRM consulting practice? Do we want to build out a consulting practice around app dev, or do we want to do both? And I think that there's opportunity, of course, in both areas. But sort of a question you need to ask yourself, especially if you're beginning, it probably behooves you to focus in one area first and sort of grow from there.
Right.
Rather than try to do everything.
Kim, your thoughts?
I think this is a really good question. I would answer it in two ways. If anybody came by our booth or saw our booth in the main pavilion, we have this big, huge, sort of scary charts called our value map. And one of our sort of go-to-markets that we try to do is figure out what is the value you're trying to derive from implementing Salesforce. I think a lot of companies go down the road of they get sort of enamored with the shiny penny of Salesforce, but really we're trying to chart where they want to go with that particular product. And we've brought some of that methodology, but I think the real secret sauce, though, is what we're trying to perfect is how can the platform be used in industry-specific solutions. So we're trying to take things where Deloitte, one of our primary, I think, value props is we have a thing called Industry Print, which allows you to customize Salesforce to fit certain industry applications. And the way we're viewing the platform right now is we're looking for the white space that maybe there's not an application developed yet, that's not off the market or off the shelf, that we can develop in the cloud on the platform with Salesforce. So we're really trying to go very deep in the industry for industry-specific solutions that we can build on the platform, that there isn't that application, that they're doing that in Excel spreadsheets today or whatever. And so our sort of, I think our mantra right now is to really double down with Salesforce and do it in industry-specific solutions.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I think the other thing I think would be interesting to hear about, and maybe this is, I'll give you your reflective moment. I mean, if you were to start this again, if you were to do it again from scratch, knowing what you know now, what would you have done? What would you do differently if this was your first entree into enterprise cloud computing with Salesforce? What would you do differently? What would you expect from us to do differently? Just if you share some thoughts with the audience, I think that'd be really useful. Maybe we can start with you, Greg.
Sure. I think one of the things we talked about as an organization is one thing that Mark and I think Salesforce have done a great job in is every year there's the big keynote, but every year they deliver on that technology, and every year they've grown the capabilities of the platform. As an organization, I think for us, what would we have done differently, or what would I do? I think we would bring in, really that business process experts earlier. I think, it's interesting, as Kim mentioned, that the platform has opened up, we've gone beyond traditional CRM capabilities to enabling, various processes, from compliance to, I mentioned, policy management, things that are beyond just traditional CRM. So it's interesting that, you have kind of the three of us kind of representing the agile consulting world, and you've got the management consulting world kind of converging. And I think that's going to be an interesting to see how that kind of plays out as, Deloitte and the Big Four clearly, play in that the space here, and as we are kind of moving upstream. So I think enabling our organization to kind of play in that space that is probably yet to be defined to some extent.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think there's a sort of interesting thing going on, and it's this idea of who are the really who are the go-to guys for helping a company transform to the cloud. And as I say, I get a lot of feedback from customers saying, look, we sort of get it because we see it, you know. And the one thing, you know, I think one of the things that made Salesforce so successful is that, you know, it's there, it's real, you can see it, you can use it, and as you said, Greg, you know, maybe 5, 6 years ago, people have said, you know, is it secure? You know, can you do stuff fast over the internet? You know, is it going to be, you know, flexible? Is it scalable? Is it reliant? Is it redundant? I think those are all done, right? Well, I don't get asked about them anymore. So, Mike, where would you go back to? What would you change? What do you think, rethink?
Yeah, there isn't a whole lot I would change, actually. It's been, we've been in business for 3 years, and working with Salesforce has been just a fantastic experience. So I don't think, you know, our approach would change at all. I think, you know, from a delivery organization in particular, I think we, taking advantage of the resources that Josh talked about, I think, is something that we probably could do better at. There's a lot out there, and we're just now starting. We're getting all of our consultants certified, and so we're starting to push them into all of the training and online libraries and those types of things that Salesforce provides. And watching what that's doing with the organizations and the dialogue that's happening, I wish we would have done that a long time ago. At least, you know, get them more involved in dropping into that.
Okay. I totally concur with that. I mean, at Deloitte, we sort of think we know all the answers sometimes. I'm not sure that's always correct, but I think we were hesitant to take advantage of a lot of the tools that Salesforce had, and I think they've grown up as an organization, and those tools are much more mature than they were before. So we as a firm are actively using, you know, the tools as we can, and I think it's a very interesting way to bring our smart, you know, people we're bringing right out of school to get them up to speed on Salesforce, and I think that's something we always thought we could just figure out on our own. We don't need Salesforce to help us do that. So I really strongly encourage all of you, especially if you're doing this road, to take advantage of the tools that are out there. Get close with your alliance contacts as much as you can, and, you know, try to, you know, one thing Aperio does very well is they stay close to some of the breaking technology, and they sort of get out ahead of the curve. And I think those are some really good lessons a lot of you can learn from.
Josh?
Yeah, really, I think I'm kind of on the same page here, so I don't want to waste everybody's time. We can surely move on to the next one.
Cool. So one of the things that we sometimes hear from our customers, you know, we like to do 3 releases a year, right? And you see that in every release, there's new functionality. Every release is something new. And as I think one of you guys said, you know, we just announced Chatter, and then, you know, we're on to the next thing. How do you guys sort of stay current? I mean, I know our own organisation, you know, we have a constant battle to make sure our customer-facing people are current on what we're doing. How do you guys manage that?
I can start. Coming out of Dreamforce probably 2 years ago, they started talking about this concept of expert services, and so pretty much we've adopted a policy within Deloitte. Whenever we have a project, we actually have Salesforce people on our teams. So that's embedded in our philosophy that we want Salesforce professional service people in all our engagements. So they are sort of the direct dialogue and, you know, sort of speaking from the Bible as far as what's coming out of Salesforce. They probably know where the bugs are quicker than we are. So that was probably another lesson that we learned. We tried to do it all ourselves in the beginning, and we've adopted this model. And, you know, I have to say, our clients, we have some raving fans because we stay up with some of the latest and breaking releases that are coming out from Salesforce, and they help us when there's bugs and different things. So that's been a big aha moment for us as well.
Yeah, Mike?
Sure. We have, inside of Aperio, we've created centers of excellence, and we have our consultants participate in their limited free time in focusing on particular areas. So we have a Salesforce automation, a Sales Cloud, Service Cloud. We have an application development center of excellence. And those individuals really dig in on the details around the new releases and around what Salesforce is offering, and builds IP and templates and those sorts of things to help teams that are out there doing implementations with those particular areas. So we have webinars every Friday where for an hour, the consultants will get on the phone and present to each other about what they're doing in their center of excellence and really share those lessons. We'll do customer demos. We'll show exactly what we're doing and what the business problem was and how we solved it, so we stay apprised of it. It's a challenge. We do have problems staying current with all the new releases, but that's how we take it.
Okay. Josh?
Yeah, it is a challenge, but it's also kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, our consultants really, I think, look forward and get excited about the new releases 3 times a year when they come out. I know, unfortunately, I don't have the time to look over every single release note, but I really do enjoy reaching out to folks on our team and saying, hey, we've got a client who's interested in doing this. Is that new feature available yet? And chances are it is, or it's coming in the next release, which just really changes the whole dynamic around. Rather than having to wait 2-3 years for a new release, really it's typically a matter of months or probably a year max for any feature we really needed or wanted. But it also creates an interesting dynamic as well, client-facing dynamic. Because the technology is changing so rapidly, we've had clients where we built something for them a year ago that we had to build something outside of Salesforce because the technology just wasn't quite there yet on the Force.com platform. 6 months to a year later, it is there, and now we're rebuilding it natively on the Force.com platform, which you'd think at first, well, geez, they just threw a bunch of money out the door. Well, no, we provided a solution for them that they needed at the time. The reality is now that we're moving into the Force.com platform, we're retiring servers that we had to put in place for them before, and they're saving a tremendous amount of money. So it's really a kind of exciting dynamic in that I would argue that Salesforce.com, with their 3 releases a year, is probably one of the most unique and sort of exciting companies that really does deliver on that.
Thanks. Great.
Yeah, I'd say, for probably all of us and everybody in the room, it's incumbent upon us to stay, current. Now, in fact, that's our jobs, right? I think to maybe turn the question is so the challenge is how do you keep your clients current? Because I think the pace of change, the innovation that Salesforce is bringing to the table, Salesforce is an agile shop, the numbers of features that are introduced, clients have a hard time keeping up. And so I think that's the challenge that we see, probably that's the opportunity for this room is enabling your clients to adopt to that change and leverage the myriad of features that are going to be available. Yeah. And so that's really, we've seen that's an opportunity and growth area for us in our organization.
Yeah. And if I can add to that, I'd be willing to make a bet that in some capacity or other, all of our organizations do this. We use this as an opportunity to reach out to our clients and say, hey, here's some new features. Let's provide some opportunities to educate your team or ways in which you can leverage these features.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to throw it over to the floor for questions in a moment. But I thought what I'd like to do is maybe one last question to you guys. And we're sort of at Salesforce. We're always thinking, what's next, and that's sort of pretty challenging, but as somebody said, it's the fun part of what we do. And I can tell you, we come up with some really wacky ideas. Thankfully, some of them don't get into production, thank God. But we also have a bunch of people who just spend their time just thinking about what's going on in the world, and I guess the whole Service Cloud 2, with getting into joining the conversation in the cloud, and Chatter are really. As Mark said, our reaction to really what's going on in the world, right? It's what people are doing. It's what people are living on, as Colin Powell called it, twits, and living on Facebook. But I'd like to get a perspective from you guys. Is how do you see your consulting organisations evolving as cloud computing becomes much more pervasive, and as some of the other more traditional software companies have that aha moment, which they're all doing pretty much now. How do you see your organisations, your approaches evolving over time? Maybe Greg, you want to take this one?
Sure. I think it's almost the challenge that I mentioned earlier around how do we kind of respond and enable our clients to leverage the cloud. I think that for us is a set of services. It's interesting. When walking over here, I saw the Deloitte guys, and the boring old consulting. The line through it. So to some extent, it's almost back to the future. That I think there are some new models in this business that I think are being tested. For us, it's almost going back to having the dialogue with the client, understanding what their needs are, and how do we, put together a program that's going to leverage them and enable them to transform their business. So it's almost for a consulting organization, almost going back to basics. So
right.
It's a little bit
back to the future.
Yeah, back to the future.
How about you, Kim?
That's a really interesting question. I think there's two things that I think there's a lot of buzz in the marketplace around right now. The one is social media, and then I think the other one is what the hell is the cloud, and how do I digest it? And I think all of us are trying to solve that and trying to make it tangible and figure out how do we take it to clients. I mean, I've been in so many meetings where, if you start talking about social media and the clients, I mean, it's the only time I see them come up to the screen and they actually want to get really close and see what's going on Twitter, what's going on Facebook. I've never seen that in my 15, 20 years of doing consulting. So I think there's all this kind of buzz, but I think people are really looking for ways to digest it. How can they actually make it tangible and make it usable? So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in that area coming forward, and I think all of our firms are, I think, frantically working to make sure we do a good job in helping Salesforce get there. I think the other one, and I said this before, is the cloud. Every company you see on the television today or reading the newspaper, everyone has something to do with the cloud, and I think it's almost become sort of it's almost, I think, lost some of its coolness or whatever, just because everyone thinks they have something to do with the cloud. And I think you really have to break it down. To me, cloud computing is software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, and you have to figure out where you want to play in that marketplace. And I think that's where you put your energies. We as a firm think platform as a service has come of age. We think it's an alternative to .NET and J2E, and we now have app development people across our firm that are actually building in Salesforce on the platform itself, and that's a whole random change that we've never had before. So I see lots more coming in that area.
Yeah, sure. It is the most exciting part is what's coming. We think that, and it goes back to Kim's discussions with the CIOs. The CIOs are starting to get it. And we really think that they are going to be looking to move their enterprises and out into the cloud. And in some cases, I mean, not everybody's going to do that, obviously, but they're going to become a serverless enterprise. They're going to close down their data centers and do things that they've really never thought about or done before. And that's going to drive, for us as partners, the opportunity for innovation there is fantastic. I mean, there are problems there that we haven't even anticipated on how you manage that, how you manage the transition, how can you make that go more smoothly, what sorts of products we're going to fit to enable an enterprise to be 100% completely in the cloud. And for us, that's where we see things going, where we want to position ourselves to provide the products and services.
Well, as the cloud has become more and more popular, as we know, there are companies that claim to be the cloud. As we all know, everybody's got a cloud offering now, and companies who I think we would really say do have cloud offerings. It's very clear that Salesforce has paved the path to show that the cloud does work. There's a reason why many other organizations, very large organizations, are coming out with similar offerings to compete in the marketplace. And so I think it'll be very interesting to see just how things transpire. And one of the challenges for us, but also as being a tech geek, as my background, sort of exciting things is, Salesforce is tremendously powerful, partly because 3 times a year you need to develop and deploy these new features and functionality, but also because of the open architecture that Salesforce provides. And so where Salesforce ends, oftentimes companies like Zuora, who have payment processing, pick up. And so learning these other complementary cloud technologies and tying those in to complement Salesforce.com is something that is both an opportunity as well as a challenge for our organization, but something that I think we wholly embrace.
That's a great answer. I think that's we're seeing the sort of, I don't know whether we call it, the multiplicity of the clouds, but this idea. I think it's sort of what's interesting for me is what I think our partners are all about. You see everything we do everywhere in whether it's the track title or our business cards. You see the word success. Usually it's associated with customer success, but we call customer success equals partner success in our minds. But, I think that for me, the real transformation and the real win, the winners in this sort of, if it is a race, are going to be those consulting organizations who can figure out how you connect the clouds and, can figure out how to really articulate to companies. Because, there's an IBM view of the world, which will be, big private cloud, and, we would say, well, that's not really a cloud, but, companies are going to go through that, and I think it's the firms that can be that sort of glue around the clouds that are going to be successful. So look, we've got 4 guys who've got a huge amount of experience of what we do and how we do it, and a huge amount of experience with their clients and customers. What I'd like to do is open the floor up to questions. We have some microphones. We can either hand them around, or you can just step up to the microphone. But I'll open the floor to any questions, and if you can just identify who you are, that'd be great, and then what your question is.
Okay, I'm Adrienne Dale, and I do business software consulting. What I'm interested in is requirements. In my experience, formal requirements have been essential to confirming clients' goals and expectations for the project and ensuring you can deliver on time, on budget. All through the conference we're hearing about, who cares about requirements, let's just do it, prototypes. Can you talk about how you approach requirements and how you manage that whole process? Thanks.
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hugely important step that I don't think anyone would say would gloss over. We have a solution framework that's very much an agile approach, but it's also it's a blend of some traditional steps that are critical to the success of an engagement. And so it's really spending that time defining requirements, and we will actually build that into our statements of work, that we need to define some success criteria that come out of those requirements and really build that into the table stakes that we need to deliver to ensure success of an engagement. So it's still a key part of our approach.
I think just to pile on there, it absolutely is a critical piece, and you continue to document them and capture them, maybe in slightly different ways than you used to.
Yeah.
I think the difference, though, is that rather than putting a stack of requirements on a business person's desk, the dialogue with the business person becomes about the application and showing them what it's going to look like, as opposed to having them try to read through and sign off on a document. Your IT counterparts who are very concerned about some of the requirements areas that need to be addressed for the application to work across an enterprise need to be in that document. But for the business user, having that visual and tactile involvement is huge.
I would add on to that. I would say one of my biggest challenges with Salesforce, or at least our firm has been, is that, I hope Martin won't get mad at me for saying this, is that the salespeople sometimes simplify the whole process of implementing Salesforce, and they say it just turns itself on. It just works. Right. And so,
That wrong.
That doesn't happen, right, Martin? So we've been brought into failed Salesforce implementations, and we've turned them around, got them correct. But you're hitting right on a very important spot, is that the requirements weren't defined correctly, or the requirements changed. And you have a tool now that's very flexible, and the business can actually change things without the IT involvement. And there's a whole governance program that has to go around that, especially in your larger implementations. And so it's still the basic consulting has to be done. And so my biggest challenge is making sure we understand the expectations have been set by Salesforce if we're working with them on an engagement.
Yeah. But if I could just actually add.
Sure.
But I think the advantage of the cloud and the advantage of Salesforce is the fact that it is running. So I think where traditional client server was, unfortunately, you were in a black box for a very long time. So you do want to leverage the fact that, we can put the system in front of the end user much quicker than we used to before. So I think you still want to take advantage of that. But right, to your point, you don't want to over-document. But there's a balance, certainly.
I think there is a balance, and I really don't think it's as throw the baby out with the bathwater scenario. I think one of the core tenets of cloud computing is that ability to iterate and do it rapidly. When you think back, in the heady days of doing a conference room pilot, right? It took 2 weeks to get to the conference room pilot, and that's the difference. That's the difference of the power of the visual impact of what we do. I think there is stuff that just hasn't changed. Integration is integration. Integration is still difficult. It is still complex. That doesn't change. And the fact is that as we've grown up, a lot more companies want to integrate Salesforce with a lot of other stuff they've already invested in. But I think what's good for our partners is that a lot of that historically, sort of commoditized consulting, you've got to have the guy in to tune the database. He's got to load the Oracle database on the server, then put together the app servers and everything, all the plumbing that goes around. All that's gone. And that's good because, that was commoditized, right? And our experiences of our customers, when they're going to our partners, they are still looking at, I want more added value. Spend more time with me up front. Help me understand how I embed this technology in my business process. Help me understand how this may change my business process. And I think that's the sort of higher ticket, higher value consulting work.
Martin, if I could just add on, the other thing that I think is often overlooked, like the requirements, is the change management aspects. So you still have all those same, change requirements and the user adoption issues you have with an on-premise application. That does not change at all. And that's often even in our own firm, that's often the part that we sort of, we always sort of think about last, but it's a very important part of the process. And even though Salesforce is a great tool, you still have all the classic change management user adoption issues you have with any tool. And for it to be successful, again, getting to those requirements and defining what the end state is all part of that, and that should be considered as well.
Yeah. Let me take another question.
So in the last session, they showed a chart talking about the complexity on one axis and the scope of work on the other axis. And with Force.com, they're basically saying, look, we're trying to make it so that anyone can program effectively, and that's the vision and the goal at some point. And so the sort of complex, very broad scope projects, I still understand as a consulting firm would be obvious, but it seems that the narrow scope, sort of less complex development is going to get commoditized or brought in-house, and it just seems as Force.com becomes more popular and more effective at delivering the anyone can program approach, more and more of the dollars go either inside the corporation or get commoditized in terms of development. So how do you see your consulting businesses changing over time? I mean, I understand there's process engineering, and that's always going to be an important part of it, but do you see coding as less and less important in this new world, or what happens, and how do you focus your efforts and energies, and where do you invest for development of your resources going forward in that new world? If that new world really will exist. Whether you believe or not, that will exist.
I think that if you look at where Salesforce is today, it's got an incredibly rich set of tools already on in the declarative side, and we spend, in terms of our consulting, we're spending probably half our time not in that world. The hard problems are going to continue to be there. They'll continue to make things easier to do it, which is great. It makes it faster for us to implement the base functionality and help customers really solve some even harder problems than they're facing today. So we don't see, that we love that innovation, right? And we want to continue to build on it with new ideas and tackle the hard business problems that they haven't been able to get to yet.
A lot of that consulting we find too comes from experience. Clients, especially who are doing initial rollouts or don't have the expertise internally, even though they may be able to do a reasonable percentage of their implementation via point-and-click tools, you still have concepts such as data schemas. You need to have a good data schema and good database practices, regardless of how easy the tools are. And so we still find clients coming to us for that level of expertise. The Salesforce also empowers us to really empower our business analysts. That before, really we're just writing documents, and now can actually do a good portion of the point-and-click configuration. Whereas the more heavy lifting does still need to be done by developers. I don't know if it's necessarily any easier or any more difficult from a development perspective. If anything, easier because you don't have to deal with the hardware and the infrastructure and the network ops stuff that we've traditionally had to deal with. But overall, I think there's a significant amount of opportunity. It's just different opportunity.
Yeah. I think there's some of the shift is that we're moving from a one-time event of setting up a system and saying, okay, thank you very much, and we're gone to Salesforce's model is, if you're adopting Salesforce's model, you're bringing something into your organization that you're going to live with and evolve with, and so early on, we talked about change management. How are you going to adopt to, or how are you going to set up your organization to take that change and leverage that into the system? Yes, there was that one-time setup, but now your business is going to change over time. How are you going to bring those changes and leverage the tool, leverage the new features of Salesforce? So that's I think as a services organization, you need to take that longer view and set up a set of services that support that model, I think.
Yeah, very true. We're spending a lot of time looking at the whole topic of application strategy and trying to figure out what are the right things to port over to Salesforce. Right. So I think, and any of you sort of thinking, considering this space, there's not all applications are ripe to go to Salesforce. And so we're spending a lot of our sort of very smart people inside Deloitte trying to figure out what part of the application portfolio is right to be ported over to the platform. And there's a whole science in that in itself. So that's big part of the chunk of time we're working on, and I think all of you, if you're thinking about this, should really consider that, because there have been some things that we've ported over to the platform that have not worked, and it's really good to get a handle around that.
Yeah, I think it also opens up, just from a technology perspective, things we could never do before. I mean, take Salesforce Mobile. We have a customer that did a 2-week application. He presented here as CIO of a company in St. Louis, presented here, and he did a 2-week application that he ported to an iPhone and got out to all of his people out in the field. The CEO saw that and said, okay, I want everything on an iPhone now. And he's being, obviously he doesn't expect everything's going to be on the iPhone, but his point is, innovate around this. You have a great idea, figure out where to take it.
Yeah, good answer, good answer. Do we have another question? Okay. You're all consultants. You should be advising this guy.
I think for us, I kind of harped on it a lot, but it's really focusing on client success. I think, and the growth of this event, Dreamforce, it's doubled over every year. I think every year we've seen it double. So I think the short-term view is, hey, how do I go in and capture market share as quickly as possible? And but at the end of the day, as a consulting organization, you're going to live and die by the success of that client. So it's really focusing on, I'd say focus on quality versus quantity, because it's very tempting to look around and say, let's grow this thing quickly, but you're going to live and die right by the success of your client engagements.
The other thing is focus, really. When you get into cloud consulting, it's a very target-rich environment, right? I mean, there are a lot of things you can do. And we picked one area when the company started, which for us was the services cloud. It was called Service and Support at the time, and we went laser focus at that, and selling those types of support for those types of implementations, built that reputation and grew from there. So it's really, and even today, there are lots of opportunities for us, and we have to be very selective in order to continue to succeed.
I think we may have time for just one more question, if we've got one out there. Anyone else? We're good? Excellent. Okay. So hopefully you've gained some insights from these 4 great companies and great partners. I think it's sort of indicative of what we're about, Salesforce, and certainly what Dreamforce is about. That sort of, I think the word was mentioned, sort of passion, and about transformation, and about believing in what you do. These companies are successful with us, I think, for one real reason, is because they actually believe this stuff makes a difference. And my advice to the gentleman over there would be, you need to think about that. Some practical advice: go to the partner portal. There's loads of stuff there. Go and look on Ideas Exchange. It is the place where we open our company up and let our customers, our partners, our community, our friend, give us ideas about what they want. It's a great place for partners to go to get a sense of where the demand is coming from. Have a look at the App Exchange. Sort of interesting. You can see trends of what's really happening out there. So there's a lot of ways of doing it. What's clear to me is we're getting more and more reliant, dependent, whatever term you want to use, on our partners to help us deliver success. But it is really key to us. The value system that we hold dear, and it's all about customer success, is a value system that these guys share with us. And if we have issues, we solve them. If we have customers, for whatever reason, are unhappy, we solve them. We solve them jointly, and it makes a good relationship. So I'd like to personally thank Greg and Josh and Mike and Kim for taking time out. I appreciate that. I'd like to thank you for your sponsorship as well, and I hope if the audience would show their appreciation for the panel, please. And I'd like to thank all of you. I know that Mike's gone off. Thanks very much. I'd like to thank all of you for coming to Dreamforce. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a great time. You saw some great things, and we'll see you back here next year. Thank you.